Hello, all those watching this video. In this video, I want to go over some Python programming. Specifically, within this Power presentation, we're going to cover data types. So let's go ahead and get started. So the data types is basically classification, categorization of a data items. A data type is also specifically what type of value is stored within a variable. So it's also a particular data. And the data types can come in many forms, and some of those data types are numbers, sequence, dictionary, Boolean, and set. And we'll cover each one of these accordingly. So if we look at the data types in a visual format, we can see that the Python data types, again, are numeric, dictionary, Boolean, set, and sequence. We also have subtypes. As an example, numeric has the integer, complex numbers, and float. And the sequence types can come in as strings, list, or tuples. Again, we'll cover those also. Alright, so data types and numbers. So the numbers in numeric contain three data subsets, as I was talking about, or subtypes. An integer essentially is a whole number, and it can be a positive or a negative, and no restrictions on the length of an integer. And typically we see that as int. A float, on the other hand, has decimal points, and it can be up to 15 decimal points for accuracy. You will see this used a lot of times if you're going to do a little more mathematics that you want a little bit refined as opposed to just a whole number. Complex numbers contains ordered pairs like the ij or iys, 2.14j, and it denotes the real and imaginary parts respectively. And this is typically in your higher mathematical complex numbers are for these. Alright, moving on. So what would one look like if it did a Python script utilizing an integer or numbers? So an integer would be something like, if we have a variable of num1, it can equal to a 5, and we can print that out. We can print out the numeric value along with some strings. As opposed to floats, it would have a point on it. In this example, it's 5.42. And then a complex number, an example of it would be 8 plus 2j. Now, if we would look at this exact same script and run it, let's see what it shows and displays. So I'm going to draw this over here so that you can see this better. This is the exact same sample that we've seen on the presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then we'll look to see what displays out here. So here I have printing the number 1, which is this variable, equaling 5. Here's my 5. Here's a string is a type of, and this type num1, this is a function. So this will tell me the data type of this variable, which here you can see that is a data type of integer, which we would expect. Likewise, with the following ones, we have a float value provided to our num2 variable, and we're printing it out to display not only the value here, but also what type, what data type it is, using our float function. And again, we see that it is a float, and we also see that it's providing the same exact value on the variable num2. And again, num3, we still have this value, and then it's given us the type or the class of complex. So that is a perfect example of numeric data or numeric data type numbers. Moving on. So the next one is a data types of sequence. So a sequence, as I mentioned before, has three subtypes, and those are strings, which is typically your numeric numbers and your letters and all that. The list is a sequence data type. Also, is a single list containing strings, integers, as well as other objects. And tuples is an immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. Like the list, they can't be changed once they are declared or once they are valued in there. So let's take a look at each one of these. So the first one is the strings. So here we have a couple of variables that we just put out. First name with mine, last name with mine, But I also want to point out a couple things here. With the string, you can have either a single quote or a double quote. Both will work accordingly. And then notice the message variable, it has 3 double quotes on each end, but more importantly, you can use it as a paragraph and write multiple lines with the 3 double quotes. So here's an example of each of these string values, and we'll print those out accordingly. So let's go ahead and grab that and see what it looks like. Alright, I'm going to pull this into the frame. So again, I have the exact same thing here. I have my 3 variables with my string values, and then I'm going to print those out accordingly, but I'm also going to go ahead and print these out similar to the one before and show the type of each one of those. Which will all show string, I'm sure, but we'll go ahead and do that just so that we can keep it the same. Alright, so here I am writing this out. Here's my initial string, as you can see here, the first string, the second string, and then my message string. And then that's what these are, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, except I'm going to also put in is a type of. And here you can see that this is a type of string, string, and string, as an example. Alright. Alright, next one is a list. Now a list looks a little bit different than a string. You don't necessarily have to put a single double quote in a long string value. A list, on the other hand, is a variable, here A, B, and C, but the list can be a blank list where you can go in and massage it, either valuing it through your conditions or changing it and then retrieving it accordingly. It can be a full set of numbers, or it can actually be numbers, or rather numbers as well as string values. So here we are going to again just print out the values within the list. So we'll see a print of the variable A, print all of the variable B and C. But here also I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take the variable B, but I'm going to only print out one of the list. Now with Python, if you recall, it starts with the value of 0. Instead of starting as 1, 2, 3, 4, it actually starts as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I state here I want the 0, the index of 0 of the list B, is going to pull 1. So let's go ahead and look at that, see what it looks like. Alright, so here we have this again, and I'm going to go ahead and run it, and then that way we'll see it displayed. So here we have it ran, and we see here that it initially prints out the variable of A list value, which is a blank, and then all of our B's, and then all of our C variables as is. But as I told you before, you can also pull that variable and pull out the indexes of each of those lists. So in this example here, I had the position of 0, or the very first one. Now if you want to, let me do this real quick to show you. I'm going to rim these out. Well, let's comment these out. You can use the pound sign as a comment. Notice that it changed colors, making it green, just as you see here on this particular display. But more importantly, the pound sign will comment it out, meaning that Python is going to ignore it. But what I want to do is I want to change this to a 3 in real time. And so I'll pull B 0, 1, 2, 3. So it should pull the number 67, and I want to see that done. And let's see if it happens. And we do see that. 67 does display out as we expected it to. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. All right. Tuples. Similar to the list, except tuples typically are not changed or enumerable. So here again we have a simple variable called my group, and I have a listing of tuples, which is, you notice also they're all strings. Similar to what I showed you before with the list, you can print out all of the values within the tuple, and you can also pull out specific values of that same tuple. So let's go ahead and run this one to display it. Alright, I'm going to pull this over here, and here we have the exact same as we've seen before. I'm going to go ahead and run that module, and here we see that it prints out, and you saw that pop in, print out the initial my group, which is all the values of the tuple, and then also the number 3, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's the bongo of that, just as we did with the list. Alright, now let's go ahead and go to the next one. Now we're going to move on to dictionary. So a dictionary is a data structure, more generally known as an associative array. And it also will look different in a minute. But it's a collection of key value pairs. And the big difference here is this pairs as opposed to individual values. So each key value pair will map to the associated value. So what does that look like? So if we look like into a script of Python, let's say that we have a room number variable. We can assign John with the room 425. Then we can assign Tom with the value of 212. Now here we can also change those values accordingly. So let's say, for an example, instead of John having a room of 425, he changes it to 645. You can do that here as well. And as we print this out here in a minute to display it, we can print out the room num, which would provide all of the information on the variable, or we can just print out the specific first string, and it will provide the numeric value, the one that's associated to it. That's the distinction of the dictionary. You have typically a string value and a numeric value, and then one is associated to the other. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to go ahead and move it over to the side a little bit. But first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and comment these out, because what I want to do is I want to show you initially, actually I want to comment this out. I'm going to show you initially the full value and each of these as is on the first variable before it changes. So I'm going to go ahead and run that module, and I'm going to show you, here is the display. So as you can see here, it provides all of the dictionary values, and then it only actually provides the value associated to the first part. So when I choose Tom, it gives me the numeric value of 212. As we do John, the numeric value 425. Now, let me uncomment this, because we're going to change the value from 425 to 645 on our second command line, and we're going to rerun it. And again, we'll see the whole thing displayed, the initial 212, but John's changed from 425 to 645, because on this second line, I said, hey, in this variable, let's make John actually equal or associated to 645. So that's an example of dictionary within the Python. All right. So the next data type to go over is Boolean. Now Boolean, it's a binary choice, true or false. There is no in between. And those are it. And typically Booleans are created to check something if it's true or false. You might be able to use this like within a loop, so long as it's true, continue to run, as an example. So what does a Boolean might look like? So a Boolean might look like this. So if I have a variable of x that's false, I give it one of two values of false. And I can print that, and it will actually print out false, because x is equal to false. It'll print out false. Likewise, same thing for true. Now let's say that we want to return a false if it's not equal to each other. As I mentioned before, you want to see if it's true or false based upon a condition. So here we're going to say a variable of x is equal to 5. a variable of y is equal to 10. Are these two equal to each other? And then it will print out yes or no, true or false. Same thing with the x equals none. It will print out, it's another deal for false, right? False as an x in an empty sequence also. So let's go ahead and run these and show you what these look like. All right, let me pull these over here. It's going to be the exact same thing that we just seen on the display screen. I'll go ahead and run that module. And over here we'll see that it's popping out false as we expect it to, because we told it it's false. True as we expect it to, because we said the x is actually true this time. Does 5 equal to 10? In Python you do the double equal signs to check on a condition, and no, it's not, it's false. X and none is also false, and blank is the empty sequence, which is also false. Now just for grins, I'm going to go ahead and change this one, and I'm going to rerun it, and we're going to see these pop out. And now, does 10 equal to 10? Yes, it does. So now it is actually true. So it's a true statement. So that's an example of a Python utilizing Booleans for the data type. Moving on to the next one. All right, so the next one we're going to is the last one on this video, which is a set. Now a set is also a little bit different. Set types has the following characteristics. So they're unordered, they're unique, and you cannot have a duplicate of within a set. So as an example, if you have 1, 2, 3, that's fine, but you cannot have a 1, 1, which is a duplicate. It won't let you. Sets also can be modified, but the elements contained is immutable type, meaning you can't change the data type of a string into an integer, etc. So what does one look like in a set? So if we look at an example of a set, here we have an integer type of set. So a student ID, all numeric values, 112, 115, and also notice it's out of order. It does not matter with a set. It doesn't care. So here we can print out a string variable, string value of student ID, and then each one of those accordingly. Vowel letters as well. Notice that you have a string, so you have a single quote on each one of those, identifying them as a string type. And again, we can print those out. And you can have a mixed. So you don't have to have one or the other. You can have a mixed data types. And we'll see that when we run it. Now, and then the last one, of course, is what I've done before, is let's pull out one value or one of the mixed set. And I'll let you try to think of, since this is a value of 1, which one of these is it actually going to pull? So let's go ahead and run it and find out. Alright, so here we have it here, just as I said before. I am going to go ahead and not print this one immediately because I want to just show all these initial. So I'm going to go ahead and run this module. And we'll see as it's displayed out. So we have our student ID as we've seen here, the 112s through 118, the vowel letters on our string type of set, and then we also have our mixed, hello 101 minus 2 and bye. So here we have hello 101 minus 2 and then bye. Alright, so now let me go. Now here's what I want to show you. You would think that with a set it might work just like a tuple or a list, where I can actually say, hey, within our set I just want the value of 1. Well, let's try that and see what happens. And I'm going to actually comment these out to only display what this is going to display. Run that module, hit OK, and it's going to give me an error, and it's going to say, hey, object is not subscriptable, meaning I can't do that. So unfortunately, I do not see a way currently that you can print out a specific value out of a set as of yet. Alright, that's an example of the data types. That's an example of a Python script of each one accordingly. And I hope that this provides some insight on the data types and you gain something from the video.